Section 10 of Essays of Robert Louis Stevenson. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Martin Geeson. Essays of Robert Louis Stevenson. Section 10. Pulvis et Umbra. Dust and shadow. We look for some reward of our endeavours, and are disappointed. Not success, not happiness, not even peace of conscience crowns our ineffectual efforts to do well. Our frailties are invincible, our virtues barren. The battle goes sore against us to the going down of the sun. The canting moralist tells us of right and wrong, and we look abroad, even on the face of our small earth, and find them change with every climate, and no country where some action is not honoured for a virtue, and none where it is not branded for a vice. And we look in our experience, and find no vital congruity in the wisest rules, but at the best a municipal fitness. It is not strange if we are tempted to despair of good. We ask too much. Our religions and moralities have been trimmed to flatter us, till they are all emasculate and sentimentalized, and only please and weaken. Truth is of a rougher strain. In the harsh face of life, faith can read a bracing gospel. The human race is a thing more ancient than the 10 Commandments, and the bones and revolutions of the cosmos, in whose joints we are but moss and fungus, more ancient still. 1. Of the cosmos, in the last resort, science reports many doubtful things, and all of them appalling. There seems no substance to this solid globe on which we stamp, nothing but symbols and ratios. Symbols and ratios carry us and bring us forth and beat us down. Gravity that swings the incommensurable suns and worlds through space is but a figment, varying inversely as the squares of distances, and the suns and worlds themselves, imponderable figures of abstraction, NH3 and H2O. Consideration dares not dwell upon this view, that way madness lies. Science carries us into zones of speculation where there is no habitable city for the mind of man. But take the cosmos with a grosser faith, as our senses give it to us. We behold space sown with rotatory islands, suns and worlds, and the shards and wrecks of systems. Some, like the sun, still blazing, some rotting, like the earth, others, like the moon, stable in desolation. All of these we take to be made of something we call matter, a thing which no analysis can help us to conceive, to whose incredible properties no familiarity can reconcile our minds. This stuff, when not purified by the lustration of fire, rots uncleanly into something we call life, seized through all its atoms with a pediculous malady, swelling in tumours that become independent, sometimes even, by an abhorrent prodigy, locomotory, one splitting into millions, millions cohering into one, as the malady proceeds through varying stages. This vital putrescence of the dust, used as we are to it, yet strikes us with occasional disgust, and the profusion of worms in a piece of ancient turf, or the air of a marsh darkened with insects, will sometimes check our breathing, so that we aspire for cleaner places. But none is clean. The moving sand is infected with lice. The pure spring, where it bursts out of the mountain, is a mere issue of worms. Even in the hard rock the crystal is forming. In two main shapes this eruption covers the countenance of the earth, the animal and the vegetable, one in some degree the inversion of the other, the second rooted to the spot, the first coming detached out of its natal mud and scurrying abroad with the myriad feet of insects, or towering into the heavens on the wings of birds, a thing so inconceivable that, if it be well considered, the heart stops. To what passes with the anchored vermin we have little clue. Doubtless they have their joys and sorrows, their delights and killing agonies. It appears not how. But of the locomotory, to which we ourselves belong, we can tell more. These share with us 1,000 miracles, the miracles of sight, of hearing, of the projection of sound, things that bridge space, the miracles of memory and reason, by which the present is conceived, and when it is gone, its image kept living in the brains of man and brute, the miracle of reproduction, with its imperious desires and staggering consequences. And to put the last touch upon this mountain mass of the revolting and the inconceivable, all these prey upon each other, lives tearing other lives in pieces, cramming them inside themselves, and by that summary process growing fat. The vegetarian, the whale, perhaps the tree, not less than the lion of the desert, for the vegetarian is only the eater of the dumb. Meanwhile, our rotary island, loaded with predatory life, and more drenched with blood, both animal and vegetable, than ever mutinied ship, scuds through space with unimaginable speed, and turns alternate cheeks to the reverberation of a blazing world 90 million miles away. 2. What a monstrous spectre is this man, the disease of the agglutinated dust, lifting alternate feet, or lying drugged with slumber, killing, feeding, growing, bringing forth small copies of himself, grown upon with hair like grass, fitted with eyes that move and glitter in his face, a thing to set children screaming, and yet looked at nearlier, known as his fellows know him. How surprising are his attributes! Poor soul, here for so little, cast among so many hardships, filled with desires so incommensurate and so inconsistent, savagely surrounded, savagely descended, irremediably condemned to prey upon his fellow lives. Who should have blamed him had he been of a piece with his destiny and a being merely barbarous? And we look and behold him instead filled with imperfect virtues, infinitely childish, often admirably valiant, often touchingly kind, sitting down amidst his momentary life to debate of right and wrong and the attributes of the deity, rising up to do battle for an egg or die for an idea, singling out his friends and his mate with cordial affection, bringing forth in pain, rearing with long-suffering solicitude his young. To touch the heart of his mystery, we find in him one thought, strange to the point of lunacy, the thought of duty, the thought of something owing to himself, to his neighbour, to his God, an ideal of decency, to which he would rise if it were possible, a limit of shame, below which, if it be possible, he will not stoop. The design in most men is one of conformity. Here and there, in picked natures, it transcends itself and soars on the other side, arming martyrs with independence. But in all, in their degrees, it is a bosom thought. Not in man alone, for we trace it in dogs and cats, whom we know fairly well, and doubtless some similar point of honour sways the elephant, the oyster, and the louse, of whom we know so little. But in man, at least, it sways with so complete an empire that merely selfish things come second, even with the selfish, that appetites are starved, fears are conquered, pains supported, that almost the dullest shrinks from the reproof of a glance, although it were a child's, and all but the most cowardly stand amid the risks of war, and the more noble, having strongly conceived an act as due to their ideal, affront and embrace death. Strange enough if, with their singular origin and perverted practice, they think they are to be rewarded in some future life; stranger still if they are persuaded of the contrary, and think this blow, which they solicit, will strike them senseless for eternity. I shall be reminded what a tragedy of misconception and misconduct man at large presents, of organised injustice, cowardly violence, and treacherous crime, and of the damning imperfections of the best. They cannot be too darkly drawn. Man is indeed marked for failure in his efforts to do right. But where the best consistently miscarry, how tenfold more remarkable that all should continue to strive! And surely we should find it both touching and inspiriting that in a field from which success is banished, our race should not cease to labour. If the first view of this creature, stalking in his rotatory isle, be a thing to shake the courage of the stoutest, on this nearer sight he startles us with an admiring wonder. It matters not where we look, under what climate we observe him, in what stage of society, in what depth of ignorance, burthened with what erroneous morality. By campfires in Assiniboia, the snow powdering his shoulders, the wind plucking his blanket as he sits passing the ceremonial calumet, and uttering his grave opinions like a Roman senator. In ships at sea, a man inured to hardship and vile pleasures, his brightest hope a fiddle in a tavern, and a bedizened trull who sells herself to rob him, and he, for all that, simple, innocent, cheerful, kindly like a child, constant to toil, brave to drown, for others. In the slums of cities, moving among indifferent millions to mechanical employments, without hope of change in the future, with scarce a pleasure in the present, and yet true to his virtues, honest up to his lights, kind to his neighbours, tempted perhaps in vain by the bright gin palace, perhaps long suffering with the drunken wife that ruins him. In India, a woman this time, kneeling with broken cries and streaming tears as she drowns her child in the sacred river. In the brothel, the discard of society, living mainly on strong drink, fed with affronts, a fool, a thief, the comrade of thieves, and even here keeping the point of honour and the touch of pity, often repaying the world's scorn with service, often standing firm upon a scruple, and at a certain cost rejecting riches. Everywhere some virtue cherished or affected, everywhere some decency of thought and carriage, everywhere the ensign of man's ineffectual goodness. Ah, if I could show you this, if I could show you these men and women all the world over, in every stage of history, under every abuse of error, under every circumstance of failure, without hope, without help, without thanks, still obscurely fighting the lost fight of virtue, still clinging in the brothel or on the scaffold to some rag of honour, the poor jewel of their souls. They may seek to escape, and yet they cannot. It is not alone their privilege and glory, but their doom. They are condemned to some nobility. All their lives long, the desire of good is at their heels, the implacable hunter. Of all earth's meteors, here at least is the most strange and consoling, that this ennobled lemur, this hair-crowned bubble of the dust, this inheritor of a few years and sorrows, should yet deny himself his rare delights, and add to his frequent pains, and live for an ideal, however misconceived. Nor can we stop with man. A new doctrine, received with screams a little while ago by canting moralists, and still not properly worked into the body of our thoughts, lights us a step farther into the heart of this rough but noble universe. For nowadays the pride of man denies in vain his kinship with the original dust. He stands no longer like a thing apart. Close at his heels we see the dog, prince of another genius, and in him too we see dumbly testified the same cultus of an unattainable ideal, the same constancy in failure. Does it stop with the dog? We look at our feet, where the ground is blackened with the swarming ant, a creature so small, so far from us in the hierarchy of brutes, that we can scarce trace and scarce comprehend his doings. And here also, in his ordered polities and rigorous justice, we see confessed the law of duty and the fact of individual sin. Does it stop then with the ant? Rather, this desire of well-doing and this doom of frailty run through all the grades of life. Rather is this earth, from the frosty top of Everest to the next margin of the internal fire, one stage of ineffectual virtues and one temple of pious tears and perseverance. The whole creation groaneth and travaileth together. It is the common and the godlike law of life. The browsers, the biters, the barkers, the hairy coats of field and forest, the squirrel in the oak, the thousand-footed creeper in the dust, as they share with us the gift of life, share with us the love of an ideal, strive like us are tempted to grow weary of the struggle to do well, like us receive at times unmerited refreshment, visitings of support, returns of courage, and are condemned like us to be crucified between that double law of the members and the will. Are they like us, I wonder, in the timid hope of some reward, some sugar with the drug? Do they too stand aghast at unrewarded virtues, at the sufferings of those whom, in our partiality, we take to be just, and the prosperity of such as, in our blindness, we call wicked? It may be, and yet God knows what they should look for. Even while they look, even while they repent, the foot of man treads them by thousands in the dust. The yelping hounds burst upon their trail, the bullet speeds, the knives are heating in the den of the vivisectionist, or the dew falls, and the generation of a day is blotted out. For these are creatures compared with whom our weakness is strength, our ignorance wisdom, our brief span eternity. And as we dwell, we living things, in our isle of terror, and under the imminent hand of death, God forbid it should be man, the erected, the reasoner, the wise in his own eyes. God forbid it should be man that wearies in well-doing, that despairs of unrewarded effort, or utters the language of complaint. Let it be enough for faith that the whole creation groans in mortal frailty, strives with unconquerable constancy, surely not all in vain. End of Section 10. Recording by Martin Geeson in Hazelmere, Surrey. End of Essays of Robert Louis Stevenson.